Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a very, very special edition of Tim's Vinyl Confessions. I'm Tim Derling, and I'm very pleased to have my guest on this particular episode because, as anyone knows, and as anyone who knows where I got the name of my channel from, Vinyl Confessions, I'm a huge Kansas fan, and the lady I'm speaking with is responsible for, among other things, the two most recent Kansas studio albums. I would like to introduce to everyone Denise de la Cerda. Hello, Denise.
Hi. Hi, everybody.
Thank you so much for
Yeah,
doing it, Denise.
it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. I don't know where to begin. I'm not a big talker. You got to pull it out of me. Okay.
Okay. Well, so Denise, I guess first of all, I discovered you on Instagram when the last Kansas album came out, and I will just get this out from my collection to show. I'll drop everything here. From 2020, The Absence of Presence. And I guess I had been searching for other people who would use the hashtag an absence or the absence of presence. And I keep getting it mixed up. It's the absence of presence, not and. And I came across your Instagram, and you described working on the cover. So I said, okay, remember that. And so I guess the first thing I'd like to ask is I know that I've talked to other cover designers, and I know that when a band approaches someone to do their artwork, it doesn't matter if they're a fan of the music necessarily. It's a job. But were you previously a fan of Kansas?
Yeah, I was. Kansas was that was my teenage years, you know. I graduated in high school in 1980. I know that dates myself, but so what? I don't care. And so, gosh, the first records that I bought were Kansas records and ELO records. And I was buying records because of the cover art, because, in those days you couldn't listen. You had no idea what you were buying till you put it on the turntable. And so I would buy these records and take them home and sneakily put them on my parents' turntable and listen with headphones so nobody knew I was listening to devil music. And,
Which is ironic,
kind of
considering Kansas wasn't exactly devil music.
No, they're not.
Not at all.
Like so far from devil music. It's
quite the opposite, as a matter of fact.
Yeah. But your parents in the 70s don't
I know the
that.
perception, long-haired rock and roll guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so that's how I used to listen to my records, was kind of on the sneak, and I really enjoyed the album cover art. And gosh, at that point in time, if you had told me one day you will do album covers for Kansas, I wouldn't have believed you, and I would have cried,
Yeah. I love it when it's so cool when it's a feel-good story. It's like your fandom paid off, and your eye for the artwork, and obviously you got into doing artwork.
Oh yeah, I mean, I was a painter since I was a child. I didn't get to be a good painter until a little bit later, but it's like, gee, if I hadn't have done that, I wouldn't have the foundation that I'm standing on right now.
Yeah.
And so, no, it's magical how things like that happen, totally a teenage dream. And so when one day, out of the blue, I was sitting in my studio in Paterson, New Jersey, because that's where it was at that moment. I get this phone call, and it's Philly Hart, from Kansas, and he was fully expecting a hang up because I guess people do that. You know, somebody famous calls you and you don't believe them and you hang up. And I just thought, well, you know, you never made it. Why would somebody impersonate Phil Ehart of all people?
Exactly. Yeah,
And so
exactly.
why don't I just listen to what he has to say, you know? And so um so that's how the conversation began. And he had found me on Facebook because I had done a back piece of a phoenix on a beautiful woman who's now a very good friend of mine in Manhattan when I had a studio there. And so when I posted those pictures on Facebook, because that's what you did. And I guess somehow Phil came across this and said, that's what I want for, um, you know, the Prelude Implicit. And so that's what he was asking for, was a cover, a phoenix. Yes, that phoenix from the Prelude Implicit. And so I redrew it. It's based on this phoenix that I drew for this woman who got it on her back that I did. But I redrew it to be an album cover that you could fold out, you know, and yes.
So I always have to have props. People laugh. Yeah, Tim's got the props. Yeah.
Yeah, props, you know, props. And so, okay. So in any case, he actually wanted a hand painted thing. And I was kind of surprised in a way because quote everybody in quotation marks wants digital art or something. AI wasn't a thing at that moment, but it is now, and everybody's all, oh, AI is so much better. And it's like, who needs oil on canvas or anything handmade? We have AI. And but actually Phil wanted oil on canvas, and Phil did not know that I'm a painter at that point in time. So, because that's, yes, I do tattoos for a living, but my strong suit really is hand painted oil paintings. And I have, you know, a 70s prog rock surrealist background. So that's what the things I draw and paint tend to look like. You know, you can sort of, you can see the thread. And yeah, so he asked for a phoenix, and so I drew on paper a pencil drawing of a phoenix, the size that it ought to be if it's shrunk down, because I always draw big and then shrink it down. And I sent them the pencil drawing, like photographs of the pencil drawing, and they all loved it. And I was stunned because tattoo people are never like that. Tattoo people want to nitpick you to death.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And
Your
so,
clients. Yeah.
yes.
Looks good, but this. Can you make this a little more?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my God, they're insufferable. And so I was like, what? You don't want me to change anything? You like it? Oh, okay. Well, in that case, I should get going on it then. And so that's what I did. And I was just kind of shocked and amazed. They like it. No changes.
They like it as is. Yeah. My job, I write radio scripts, and it's like, we love it, but
can you
add?
change?
Can you add this? Can you make this more? Yeah. It very rarely is it one and done. It's usually a process.
So these people have been the easiest clients I've ever had. The most nail bitiest clients, yes, because I want to make a good thing and this is going to be seen, and it's for these people that are just like I have on a pedestal, right, in my head. And so it's like, yeah, it's a nail biter of a project, but I was kind of stunned that they kind of liked everything I did. They only had me change one thing once, in the absence of presence. And that's they had me change one thing in the poster, but that's okay. That's to be expected. If you don't do that at least once, it's like, are you sure? Did you really look at this?
It shows that they care.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So
So, I mean, this is such an amazing thing because the Prelude Implicit was the first. First of all, I do want to say for people that aren't really into Kansas, they might think, well, that's kind of strange for the drummer of the band to directly call, someone to work for them on an album cover. Phil basically is Kansas manager, and
yeah.
he does everything for this band. Oh, and he also happens to be an amazing drummer. So Phil's
Mhm.
very hands on. So that's why Phil would be the guy to direct. It's not through an agent or a manager or anything like that. So yeah, that would be why you heard directly from Phil, and he's very particular. I've always read Phil's very particular about if the Kansas
He
logo
is.
is going to be on something, it's got to
Yeah.
be just the way they want it. I mean, I got into Kansas. I mean, I'm a little bit younger, not that much. I was born in '74, same year the first album came out, and I, not having like older brothers or like older cousins that were into, '70s rock, I kind of discovered things on my own. I never heard of Kansas until I heard All I Wanted on the radio in 1986, and I know that's way, way past Left Overture, Pointed No Return, and all that, but in '92 I got into them. I just dove headlong into their catalog, and one of the things that drew me in was that cover art. I mean, I would see the Left Overture cover in stores
Mhm.
and think that's a cool cover. I felt like that guy before, that perplexed look on his face. And I remember just seeing the Monolith album cover and thinking that was the coolest thing. And
That was the best.
yeah.
That was my favorite of all of them.
So it
Painting the best.
not only was it amazing to discover this band that had this massive back catalog, had more albums than I had any idea that they had. I just didn't know. I bought the Best of Kansas CD, and then I went backwards, um, and the artwork informed my experience of the music every bit as much as the music. To me, it was just all part of it, and it's not the same if you take the artwork out of it. And mostly, it's the '70s. It's Tom Drennan and Peter Lloyd, who created those timeless images. I mean, the Point of No Return with the ship going off the edge of the
Mhm.
world, and Song for America with that with the bird with the claws.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure, but I'm assuming that they also came up with the logo, which is one of my favorite rock and roll band logos ever. I used to sit and draw that all the time. I love the way the letters are put together. So yeah, being fully into the band, the Prelude Implicit was a huge deal because it was the first new Kansas album since Somewhere Elsewhere, which is way back in 2000. So
Yeah.
16 years later, now they're announcing, okay, they got Ronnie Platt in the band on vocals, they got a slightly new lineup, and they're doing a new album. And I couldn't have pre-ordered it soon enough. And I remember seeing this, okay, here's what it's going to look like. And I'm like, yeah, they can always count on them for awesome artwork. And I love the album too. And they also repurposed Your Phoenix. And by the way, I have to think that's why Phil wanted the Phoenix, because it was their first new album in 16 years. They're back, they're
Yeah.
Phoenix
Yeah.
from the ashes, right? But they repurposed it on the Left Overture Live and Beyond. So you
Yeah.
get a credit for the Phoenix on this. And of course, that carries on into the back because
Oh my. Yeah.
yeah. And then, 4 years later, 4 years isn't bad nowadays in between albums for classic bands, because some classic bands don't even do new music. So then I find out, okay, they're doing a new album. Well, I got to order that. It's automatic. And I got to tell you, it was a highlight because when this album came out, I mean, we're in lockdown, right? It's the
Yeah.
world is a very, very different place. And The Absence of Presence comes out. So
Dude, that album was created and the artwork was discussed before anyone knew about COVID. Do you know
That's
that?
that's really serendipitous, because lyrically, a lot of the songs on the album, uh, you could interpret as being about that. But the fact that it's not, I didn't know that. I like the artwork so much, Denise. I even bought the mug from the website. That's how. I mean, I'm telling you, I'm diehard Kansas fan.
Thanks.
And I was but when I first looked at the album, I'm like, this is really cool, but I was like, oh, they didn't put the logo on here, and then I found it.
Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah, and I'm like, okay, absence of press. I get it. Okay, how it's clever, and I do want to direct people to Denise's website. I'll post the link anyway in this episode. But if you look at her paintings, you can see the full oil on canvas, front and back cover, the original painting, no logo, no title, and it looks amazing. Absence of Presence is there, and I just saw this for the first time. The Kansas 50th anniversary poster, which is so cool. It's a little bit like the Best of Kansas from '84, because it combines the iconography from the previous albums, but it goes all the way up to the present. So of course, it's got the Phoenix. It's got, I'm not sure what do you call this person here? They look very
I don't know what
confused.
to call him either. The Absence of Presence guy.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't really have a name for him.
But the 50th anniversary poster is incredible, and you also did stage backdrops. So yeah, and there's some other artwork of yours. It's very, very. Oh, I love the dog one. That's awesome. Anyway, yeah, I'll have that posted. But so in both cases, I guess you've already kind of said that. But in Prelude Implicit's case, Phil had an idea of what he wanted.
Yeah,
Wanted the
he did.
Phoenix.
Well, he actually asked me to come up with something iconic, and he didn't get specific at all. So he
Yeah,
did not
come up with
tell
something
me
iconic. Go.
exactly.
Yeah,
That's what
okay.
he did. And I went through my camera roll on my phone, and because like I take a lot of pictures of, because it's going to be used for reference someday. So I take nature, I take all kinds of stuff, and obviously most of it doesn't get used, but once in a while something does. And that was based on a street performer that I saw in Manhattan, and I took his picture, and it many years ago. And so and I changed the guy's face just a little bit because I didn't want it to be identifiable as, oh, it's this guy.
You're talking about the Absence of Presence cover?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I changed the face to make it so that it's not one identifiable person, but the model, this street performer, was ripped. He had a great physique, he had a great musculature. And so that's why I took photos of him. And so that's what I used to get the pose and to get the muscles showing in the forearm and all this thing. And just changed his face a little bit so it's not an identifiable person, and took it from there. Now they did give me a wish list. Richard especially gave me a wish list of, he wanted nature stuff in there, especially like landscape elements from the state of Kansas. And I have never been to the state of that. I've never been to the state of Kansas. And so I had to do a bunch of research. And so it's sort of a mashup of the flat landscape that you would see in the state of Kansas. And there's even a tiny little, there's a car that's not in view that's kicking up dust on a highway in the background on the back side of the record cover. And there's a little dust devil, that is the indication that there's a dirt road back there somewhere with a car on it. And a
Okay, yeah, I've
tiny,
never noticed that
teeny,
before, and I also right here, it says, there's a sign that says welcome. Does it say welcome to Kansas?
Yes,
Yeah,
that was a direct request.
I was today years old when I found that out. Just looking at it now.
Well,
Wow.
that they actually requested that. Richard requested the landscape elements, and Phil. It may have been other people too, but Phil is the one that said, "Hey, can you do a tiny little sign somewhere that says "Welcome to Kansas"?" And so I said, "Oh yeah, sure." And then we can do like a little car and a little dust devil and a, just hide the Easter eggs in there. Easter eggs are fun.
That's the great thing about the Kansas art, where there, there's the attention to detail and putting those little Easter eggs in there for people that care about those things and pour over the cover art. But yeah, I mean, I've never been to Kansas, but I mean, they themselves have said you can't believe how flat it is. Like you can see so far away. And Phil even said on their
Yeah.
documentary, the highest point in Kansas is known as a mound, not even a
Right.
hill. So yeah, that's really cool. And so here you are, and you're hearing from Phil Lee Hart and Richard Williams, who are the two remaining original members. You grew up listening to Kansas music, and I'm assuming being inspired by that artwork as well.
Mhm.
Did you ever, and now here you are, you've got your name credited,
I
you know,
know.
in Kansas albums. That is so cool.
It's very surreal, you know? No, I'm like kind of blown away that this all transpired and how it transpired. And gosh, they're the easiest, nicest people to work with. Seriously. And so they've just worked really, really hard for the last 50 years. And it shows, and that was Phil's baby, that band and that whole experience. That was his thing. He was the ass kicker behind it all.
Yeah. And Phil he's always had that eye, because he has said that he always knew if he ever put out an album, what he wanted on it. And it was that photo of John Brown from the Kansas State Building that
Mhm.
now adorns the first Kansas album. So he's always had an eye towards that. But you know, the the Song for America album cover is just so, I mean, they always delivered. Some of them in the 80s weren't quite as inspired, but I mean, there's always like striking artwork. And the fact that you get to, you're a part of that legacy now, and that's amazing. And it's the fact that he just discovered you on Facebook. It's a real in a way, like it's a classic band, and the artwork is very classic looking, and it's got elements that just take me back to the 70s albums. But it's a very modern way of him discovering your work and getting in touch via Facebook.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's none of that could have happened without today's technology.
Yeah, so it's not all bad.
Yeah, no, it's not all bad. I mean, I don't think technology is bad. It's just,
It's
you know,
how it's been used.
yeah.
So, at what point were you asked to do the backdrops for their stage shows?
Oh, when they were planning their tour and they needed backdrops. And they've got a bunch of backdrops. That's not the only one they're using, but they wanted once again he called up out of the blue and wanted a 40-foot by 70-foot backdrop. And so it was like, okay. And in the back of my head, how in the hell am I going to pull that off? And no, that was done in Photoshop. Fortunately, I've been doing Photoshop the last few years just to know how to do it, and so that was copying and scanning a lot of my own work and some of the classic work um redoing it. But yeah, that was all done digitally, and I had to learn what specifications this company that printed the backdrop needed and all that. That was printed. Like,
Wow.
isn't that crazy?
On Okay, on
40
what
foot
exactly?
on Scrim, on this,
Okay, okay.
yeah, like theatrical Scrim. But it's like, damn, I didn't know people print that big, but I guess you can.
I guess I never thought about it. I mean, but it's got to be on something.
Gotta be on something.
Yeah.
And they did used to have a woman who hand painted a lot of their backdrops, and she passed away. And so they couldn't get her to hand paint backdrops. And what she would do is they would project imagery onto a scrim, and she would just be there with brushes and rollers and paint it, by hand. And but gosh, I've never done a hand painted thing that big. I wouldn't,
Yeah.
I can't say I would know what to do. And so um so yeah, this they went with digital, by a digital format, digital means to get the
It
image
looks
on the scrim.
it looks amazing, and it's got like the poster, it's got elements of the different covers in there, and it just looks very classic Kansas. So as a fan, Denise, what were some of your favorite like Kansas albums and specific songs? Like what were the, maybe aside from the obvious ones, are there any that really spoke to you in any way? Like,
Well, Point of No Return was pretty electrifying for me. It was at that time nobody had ever heard such music. It was brand new. And yeah, rock and roll had been a thing for a while, and there were prog rock artists out there, but like this is one of those records that I would hear the cool kids talking about, like, "Hey, have you heard this? Look at this." It's like, and but they wouldn't share the information with somebody like me. I was a nerd, and so so I'd have to go to the record store and sort of quietly go like this and like, oh, there it is, buy it with my newspaper money and listen. And but I enjoyed entire albums, at that time. And also just personally, growing up is hard for anybody. Everybody's
mhm,
traumatized, right?
yeah.
But after I grew up and was out the door, I wasn't listening to prog rock. Like by the mid 80s, what was I listening to by that time? I don't even remember. I think I went full on punk for a while, but because music has a way of bringing you right back to a time and a place. And so it's, I got more excited about the more recent stuff because it had nothing to do with the time zone, of the 70s and
Yeah.
early 80s, which was really pretty. It's like, gosh, I was a young person. Every young person is messed up.
Yeah. Oh
you
yeah. It's
know?
hard time. Yeah.
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 Um, so yeah, I tend to like the more power rock stuff, like the Throwing Mountains song, It's like I like the power rock stuff. I I'm not so much into the um operatic um drama singing, but that's just me. But boy, do they do power rock like par
That's
excellence. They
and
really
that's
do.
the other thing, like, that I've been trying. I'm always one to trumpet um veteran bands putting out new music, and like, hey, forget the fact that, yeah, these guys have been doing it since the early 70s. These new albums are really, really good, really, really strong. And I like the Prelude Implicit. I think the Absence of Presence took it a step further. And yeah, there's songs on there that just rock. Throwing Mountains, Jets Overhead, Circus of Illusion. I mean, it's really good
Yeah.
stuff. It's really good quality stuff. And I always try to trumpet new bands or new music by classic bands because there's no format for, there's not a lot of formats for them except, going out on the road. And Kansas they've gone through, I mean, every classic rock band goes through those peaks and valleys, but they stuck with it. And, you know, I love the fact that, you know, that Wayward Son got used in Supernatural, and then all of a sudden, like my daughter loves that song, and I would never even have thought to play Kansas for her, but
Yeah.
she's singing that song. Now, how do you know that song? How do you know that song of all the, you know, the songs to know? So, and it's amazing, and they just keep doing it. My only wish is that they would play Eastern Canada. That's just that's where I am. But they're road dogs. They just pound the pavement. So I'm assuming, because you've done so much work for them, that you've more or less stayed in touch. Like where I'm going with this
Yeah.
is, like, you know, you find out they're working on something. You think they're going to come to you and say, "Here's our title. What do you think?"
Maybe. I mean, I try not to be in your face or annoying, and I I don't know, that's just not me. Basically, um, I feel like we're on very good terms and very friendly terms, but it's not like I'm gonna call them and email them all the time,
Right.
you know, they've got
Right.
work to do.
Yeah.
And, but I would hope they would ask me to do something new, you know, if they're planning on something new. Um, so, you know, we'll see. We'll
So,
see.
given like in modern times, the way that this all came about, um, have you ever actually met any of the guys face to face, or has this all been
Yeah.
remote? Okay.
No, I met Phil and Richard, and um popped in. I got a backstage pass to a show in New York City that they did on iHeartRadio, and so I got to meet a bunch of them. I met Dave Mannion and Zach and Richard, and you know, that's who I met. And so, because there's a lot of coming and going, but Phil has always been very personable, very friendly, and so yeah, I've met them.
So, as an artist, and as someone who was inspired by great art, who were some of your favorite artists? I know that's a broad question, but
Oh, well, for album cover art, Roger Dean was a big
oh yeah,
influence,
yeah.
you know, and I don't know who it was that designed the ELO album covers back in the day with the spaceships made out of Wurlitzer jukeboxes.
Yeah,
But
you know what? I never thought about that, but yeah, that's very striking artwork too. But yeah, Roger Dean, I mean, not just
Roger
mostly
Dean,
known for the Yes artwork, but he created
yeah,
worlds
yeah,
with his
he was
artwork.
he was really quite something. And so I was influenced in a big way by Roger Dean and the artwork for ELO covers and some of the Rush covers. Like, I think that Song for America by Kansas came out earlier than Rush came out with Fly By Night, I think.
Would have been right around the same time because it was early 75.
But look at Rush Fly By Night, the album, the cover for that. There's an owl on it that
I've
is pretty
never
much mirroring
I've
the
never thought of that before.
and,
I'm a huge Rush fan too. Huge.
and
Wow. Now
so
that album cover was designed by, that was not Hugh Syme. Hugh Syme started working with them the very next album, Caress of Steel. That was designed by a guy named Eduardo. I'm going to get his name. It starts with C. I'm going to get his name wrong, but yeah, you've got like two sort of bird-like with.
yeah, and they're doing the same thing. It's the same pose, different bird. And
That never occurred to me ever. Much
wait
as
a minute.
that's two of
Hey,
my favorite bands right there that never occurred to me. I just looked up, Denise. I just looked up ELO's Out of the Blue album cover, and the illustration is credited to Shusei Nagaoka. I probably butchered his name, but it's not a name I recognize. But
oh,
yeah,
Japanese illustrator.
yeah, and I
Yeah,
mean, and the ELO artwork always kind of makes me think of the Boston artwork
yes,
with
it's
the
it's it's definitely on the same page.
And again,
And
you've got guitars as ships this time, and not like a Wurlitzer.
yeah,
Yeah.
but like I think these people were all stealing from each other, for
Oh yeah, you couldn't
MIDI
help
and
but look around and say that looks cool. Let's try something like that. I'm also a big fan of I think Stanley Mouse, the album covers he did for Journey, like Infinity and Evolution, and I've always thought those were very striking too. I have to give Hugh Syme a mention, shameless plug, but I mean I had the absolute privilege of having Hugh design my last book. so so
ooh,
just like you get, as growing up listening to Kansas, you're credited now and inside their albums. I have a book that says artwork by Hugh Syme.
ooh,
It's a good feeling. And I'm not an artist. I just was very, very fortunate to make contact with him. But yeah,
yeah,
so yeah, Roger Dean's, I mean, and not just the obvious ones like Fragile and Close to the Edge. I love Relayer and Drama,
mm-hmm.
and the recent ones he's done too are good. That's another band, and I know they're a huge influence on Kansas. The recent Yes albums are good too. Like people got to check out this new music by these classic artists.
Yeah,
Um, so Denise, where like your primary, what is your primary? Is it the tattoo business, or what is it that
my primary what?
uh business, I guess?
The income stream, that's tattooing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but the thing that I identify as a painter, like an oil painter, and I struggle with that because in this day and age, it's like I may as well be um proudly proclaiming that I paint on cave walls with
Right. Yeah.
with dirt and
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
candlelight. It's
Yeah. You
like,
could contact me via carrier pigeon.
yes, it's like beat the drum in a certain pattern and I may hear you, that kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah.
And so, no, I feel incredibly old fashioned by saying that I oil paint and doing oil paintings, but it's
But
like,
that's timeless, though. That's timeless, and all anyone has to
I
do is,
hope so.
what's the difference? This is the difference. This is what you get when you get, you know, real real artwork.
But I gotta say, I gotta add that it, Kansas and a lot of these other prog rock bands, they're playing the music their self, their
That
gosh
too.
darn self. They are
Yeah.
playing their
That's
own
right.
music.
Yeah.
None of it is sampled or lifted or stolen from anyone else. They made it and they're playing it. So it sort of tracks that they would get an oil painter of all things to do an album cover for them, you
Yeah.
know?
It does. Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. So yeah, and as fans, and I think a lot of fans are like this, it's not just about sticking a logo, or it's a photo of the band, and it's always been about creating that experience and that anticipation. You see it and then you want to hear it.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I guess, I mean, I'm gonna, as fans, we certainly appreciate the work that goes into it. Like Phil has always struck me as the kind of guy that has a very clear vision for what he wants Kansas to represent, and how he wants it to look and sound and be presented. So this makes total sense that he would want, I don't even want to say old fashioned. I want to say timeless, a timeless approach
Yeah.
to, to everything that bears that Kansas logo. So, so Denise, thank you so much for speaking with me here. Like this has been a really, really great conversation, and so people can find Denise's. I'll have the link posted to your website, and where if people want to if people want a tattoo done, where do they find you? Where what part
I
of the
am,
world?
yeah, I am in Jamestown, New York, which is Western New York State, south of Buffalo and north of Pennsylvania, like, and very close to Chautauqua Lake, which is close to Lake Erie. So we get all that crazy weather,
Yeah.
um, but that's where I've been for the last 4 years. And so I have a shop here, and that's where you would find me, is Jamestown, New York. And you can reach out by going to denisedelacerda.com and take it from there.
Well, hopefully someday I'm somewhere in the area. Now, I'm not a tattoo guy myself, but I'll tell you what, if I ever do drop in, I'll want you to sign some of your artwork,
Thank
because
you.
because
Thank you
it's
very much.
amazing stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Denise, thank you so much for talking with me on here. As someone who's just such a big Kansas, I'm going to say it, nerd, this is a very, very big deal. So check out Denise's work. You won't be disappointed. And if you haven't heard them and haven't, go get Prelude Implicit and The Absence of Presence. They are excellent, excellent, excellent new albums by a classic band. And I want to thank everyone, as usual, for watching Tim's Vinyl Confessions. We'll see you later.
Thanks, Tim.